Today's Raiders breaking news is presented by Panda Subs. Use code Raiders for 20% off at pandasubs.com. Raider Nation, good morning. It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, with some breaking news. Christian Wilkins needs another surgery and could be out for the entire season in 2025. Coming up here on today's show, I'm going to go through everything that I know right now around the Wilkins injury. I had a source reach out to me yesterday, right before we went live, that unfortunately dropped all of this horrific news on my plate. So here's what I know as it stands right now. Wilkins does, in fact, need another surgery. And there's been speculation, there's been rumors, there has been multiple stories around Wilkins needing another surgery. I'm sitting up here telling you that somebody that I trust told me yesterday that it is a fact that he is going to have to undergo another surgery. So let's first talk about why we are here in the first place. Wilkins underwent surgery on October 8th, 2024 to repair that Jones fracture in his left foot. The Raiders were expecting a 3-month recovery. However, we're kind of going on 9 months now at this point. The reason why that this is a big-time deal is because if Wilkins, at the current spot in the offseason that we are at, if he has the surgery, he's going to be out for the season. One of my friends, he's in the medical field, I painted the whole picture of Christian Wilkins, his weight, his size, where we're at in the offseason. I said, if we get another surgery now, where are we going to be looking at? He said 4 to 6 months, but probably would have just end up mean you're going to have to shut him down. If you don't know what a Jones fracture is, it's a real pain in the ass of an injury that's located in your foot. A Jones fracture is a break or stress fracture in the 5th metatarsal bone. It's your pinky bone. The long bone on the outside of your foot connecting to the little toe. It occurs near the base of the bone, an area that is prone to slow healing due to limited blood supply. Symptoms include pain, swelling, and difficulty walking. Now, here's my thing. I always want to be able to keep you guys up to date, whether it's good news, whether it's bad news. And if you're looking for Raiders updates all offseason long, if you're looking for breaking news, if you haven't heard this story yet, make sure you're subscribed, make sure those notifications are on. I'm trying to get to 196,000 subs. We need 121 more to go. Let's go to the next thing here on the Wilkins situation. From what I was told, Wilkins does not want to have the surgery. He doesn't want to have the surgery because he personally feels that he can play through the pain. The problem with this situation is the Raiders and their medical staff have advised Wilkins to not do that. They want him to get the surgery, and the Raiders medical staff wants Wilkins to miss the season because they don't want the risk of further injury or more complications down the line. When you think about why Wilkins wouldn't want to have the surgery, there's a multitude of different reasons, right? Like, he loves football. And when the Raiders signed him last season, he's the type of guy that you want to have on your football team, and he's been able to play throughout his entire career and really hasn't missed many games, as you can see up there on screen, where last year was really the first time that he had to miss some games. I do wonder if Wilkins trying to, thug it out and get out there and play. It almost makes me wonder for the Raiders. They got a bye week at week 8. The NFL trade deadline is probably going to be somewhere around week 10, just like it was last season after November. I do wonder if the Raiders are in a spot to make the playoffs and they're winning football games, does Wilkins continue to try to play and try to go through it? Or if we're at that kind of middle point in the season, is that the opportunity where they go, all right, we tried it, we're not winning games, and then we shut him down? Because for Christian, you can't just think of for 2025. The contract that he signed, it's got long-term aspirations. So essentially, Wilkins wants surgery in 2026. In a perfect world, from what I understand, based on what I was told yesterday, Wilkins wants to try to see how he feels this offseason. I'll be real, I don't know if we're going to see him in training camp. I don't know if we're going to see him in August. And if we do see him in training camp and if we do see him in August, it means that they're just trying to see where he's at. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders go, hey, we're just going to give him as much rest time as humanly possible, and then we're going to be ready to go for week 1. But for Wilkins, he's hoping that he can get through the entire season. Even if he's not at 100%, he still feels like he can help this team, which I don't fully disagree with. But to me, I'm sitting here going, what the hell should Wilkins do? I'm going to ask y'all. So type 1 if y'all think that he should get surgery and miss the season, or type 2 if you think that he should risk injury and play this year. My answer is going to be coming up right here after this YouTube ad break. As much as I want to sit up here and say 2, when the Raiders medical staff tells you to do something, I'm just one of those guys where I'm not a medical professional, and I'm not trying to come off as a medical professional on today's show. But if doctors told me to do something, I would be the type of person that I would do it. And when you just consider just how big he is as a human being, how athletic he is as a human being, it's a lot of extra stress on that Jones fracture. I know that his cap hit this season is 18.1, but if it was up to me, I would say, Christian, this whole situation, it sucks, man. But I want you for the long haul. And I think Pete Carroll and John Spytek are also thinking like, yeah, we want to win games now, but I think the way that they've built this team, it's built more in have success in 2026 and in 2027. To me, like, that's their window. So I would have him have surgery now, miss the season. That way you know that we're going to be ready to rock and roll for 2026, 2027. There wouldn't be any excuses then. The problem is when you look at the cap numbers here for Wilkins, they've already had to restructure his contract once, or at least they moved some numbers around from that initial contract that he got. But last year, 10.3. This year he's slotted to make $18.1 million against the cap. But are you comfortable paying a player $37.7 when he's essentially missed 2 full seasons? Again, he played 5 games last year, but that's a risk to me. If I was the Raiders, I would restructure 2026, and I would be okay with keeping 2027 where it's at. But that number to me has to be restructured, whether you add extra void years or whatever you do. But I would try to figure out a way to restructure Christian Wilkins' contract, and I think that Wilkins would be okay with it just considering everything that has happened. I will be very transparent, though. When the Silver and Black signed Wilkins' last free agency, I was ecstatic. He was the number 1 free agent I wanted the Raiders to go out and get because of his coaching connections, because of the type of player that he is, and because of the type of impact that he can have on a game, and just how much I'm a believer in building in the trenches. But I've seen a lot of bad contracts in my time since I've been here on the Raiders Report, from Corey Littleton to Trent Brown to Carl Nassib to LaMarcus Joyner. I mean, how much time do we have, really? I am worried that this might be one of the worst contracts in Raiders history since I have covered the show, because the Silver and Black gave him about $27 million per year, and I'm concerned that we are never going to get the Christian Wilkins we paid for. Because when you see a little bit later on in the show, that nerve is going to be hitting you. That's all I'm going to say. So the number one question that I've been getting, because I tweeted out yesterday and I posted on my Instagram, at Mitchell Renz 365, hey, I got some big-time Raiders news, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit tomorrow. I waited until today because I knew that nobody was going to break this story because it's already been talked about a little bit. I'm just confirming it essentially on my end. But I had a lot of people go, well, why wouldn't the Raiders report it? Would you report it? Like, I'll tell you this, if I was the Raiders, I wouldn't talk about it because you don't need to release any injury reports. You don't need to release any injury information until that first week before the regular season. And if Wilkins is going to try to play through it as of now that I am recording on June 20th, then the Raiders are probably going, well, if he's going to play through it, I don't need to put out there that he's going to need a second surgery, because I'll also say this, like, what I'm about to say here is going to kind of suck for Raiders fans, but there is a part of me that wonders that if the Raiders know that he needs a second surgery, could they potentially try to move on from him? Now, I get it. He's got to pass a physical with another team, but training camp, it begins July 22nd for the Raiders. And to me, the Raiders are not reporting it because Wilkins wants to try to play through it, and they're not reporting it because, again, they don't really need to. But I love my job, and I love people that watch this show and I love rumors, because I do think rumors can lead to breaking news stories like we're watching now. And I'm not saying Pete Carroll tipped his hat at all. I think what Pete Carroll and John Spytek have done this whole offseason, I think the draft is a great example of that, is, they were doing a lot of smoke and mirrors out there, but you can understand where they're coming from. And this is what Carroll said on the Christian Wilkins injury on May 21st. He's not ready to get back out. We're in the midst of a long, challenging process. Fortunately, there's a lot of time, and we're going to take every bit of it. We've really tried to be really diligent in the way we've worked it and the way we've wanted it, all that he's been on board the whole time. So I think what Carroll is saying there, in the midst of a long, challenging process, I mean, it is a long and challenging process for a Jones fracture. But that light bulb has to go off in everybody's mind. I know it went off in my mind. And again, the issue is you're probably not a medical professional. I'm not a medical professional. But when you get a Jones fracture surgery and the expectation timeline is 3 to 4 months, and then you see a guy in a walking boot right before the NFL draft, something clearly isn't happening. So coming up next here, why does he need the second surgery? what are some treatment options that Wilkins can do? And then I reached out to a medical professional. I said, what's the long-term impact of you getting a second surgery? And I'm telling you, you're not going to like the answer. Before I get into that, today's show again is presented by Panda Sups, and we got awesome deals going on. Not only are we giving you 20% off if you use code Raiders at pandasups.com, if you spend over $125 and you live in the U.S., it's free shipping and you're going to get free creatine. I believe creatine is probably one of the best workout supplements that you can use if you are trying to add some muscle. But I am also trying to get in shape for my honeymoon, which crazy enough is in 23 days from now. And their all-new premium whey protein isolate from Panda Subs, it's totally changing the game. You could treat yourself the same delicious, high-quality fuel you're obsessed with, now in faster-absorbing, ultra-lean formula that delivers maximum protein with macro-friendly flavor explosions, making it a total delight to hit your daily goals. I mean, these flavors are unbelievable. We got peanut butter cookies, chocolate brownie whip, toasted honey graham. Let me know down below out of all those which you think sounds the best. But to me, I'm going to try to get all three of them. I'm not going to lie to you. 25 grams of protein, 100% pure whey isolate, 0 grams of sugar, and 110 to 120 calories per scoop. I have had so many different Panda Subs proteins, and I've heard this from a lot of people out there. It's actually almost hard to believe that it's good for you because of how good it tastes. If you're somebody where you're like, hey, I like smoothies, or Chugs and I always talk about a Ninja Creamy. If you have a Ninja Creamy, and if you're somebody that likes smoothies, Panda Subs protein is totally going to change the game. That link, again, is for you down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. So here we're going to go into why the second surgery. And I'm not a medical professional. I don't know how I can say that over and over and over again. I'm simply going through things that I was shared, or that I was told / was shared with me. The first reason here I would say why a second surgery could be needed, it's what's known as a non-union. And because the pinky toe, the Jones fracture, there's just so much complications with it due to that poor blood supply, it can make the healing more challenging. But essentially the non-union is the bone isn't healing correctly. And if the first surgery doesn't work due to non-union, a second surgery might be needed to promote the union between the bone, blood, again, non-union. If you want more information on it, just Google it, please, please, please. Another reason could be this, refracture. And I don't know if it is non-union. I don't know if it's refracture. I don't know which one of the situations that it is. But refracture rate post-surgery on a Jones fracture is 17 to 20%, which might not seem very high, but I'll be real. I think 17 to 20% of a post-surgery refracture, I think that is a pretty high number. And that number could probably also go up because, again, we're talking about somebody that's over 300 pounds. If the patient returns to weight-bearing activities or high-impact sports, refracture can occur. Will likely require another surgery to stabilize the bone and promote healing. One of my buddies who I reached out to, again, in the medical field, I said, which one do you think it is? Do you think it's non-union or do you think it's refracture? He literally told me it could be either. It's a coin flip, but he thought that because Wilkins wore a walking boot right before the NFL draft, he told me that he typically saw when guys that size are in a walking boot that many months after the surgery, he told me that he thought a refracture or an issue with the screw occurred because they are trying to mobilize it and take as much weight as humanly possible off that walking boot. Now, that is the one side. I have not talked to him recently. I tried to reach out to him. He's a little bit busy right now. Now, the other part of it is he's not in the walking boot anymore. And during mandatory minicamp, he wasn't in the boot, which could mean it was a non-union or a slow non-union. The other thing that could have happened is surgical complications, and I don't need to go into, the X's and the O's of this one. It's simple. Sometimes when you get surgery, complications arise. It happened to Max Crosby a few years ago with his knee injury. But I would say non-union, refracture are probably the two most likely options. So what can Wilkins and what can the Raiders potentially recommend for our defensive tackle? There are multiple treatment options, and I'm just going to explain in the most basic way that I possibly can what these treatment options are. So the first one that you could look at is just the surgery, which, again, the Raiders are recommending Wilkins get the surgery. Wilkins does not want to get another surgery because he's going to miss the season. So surgery with screws or plates may be necessary to stabilize the fracture and promote healing. That is option number one. Option number two is a bone stimulator. This device can be used to deliver a weak electrical current to the fracture site to encourage bone healing. Because the Jones fracture is where it is, and because the limited blood supply is there, this can just help kind of speed up the process a little bit more. What I think, honestly, might end up happening, and this is what scares me, because my number one thing that I'm afraid about is if Wilkins tries to play through it. And I'll always say this, I respect that he wants to play through it. I want to put that out there very clear. But if he does make this injury worse, then a bone graft could come into a situation here, because in severe cases, or if the bone is not healing well, a bone graft may be used to supplement the fracture site and encourage bone growth. I think if we hear bone grafting, we should get a little bit nervous again based on the medical professionals that I talk to. So I think the next question is, sounds like we're not going to get a fully healthy Christian Wilkins this season. And I'll also say this, though. A 70% Christian Wilkins is still one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL, but I want him to be fully healthy. So what is exactly the long-term impact that Raiders fans should know? So I reached out to Nav Singh Badesha. You guys might know him on Instagram as Medspired. He's got over 150,000 Instagram followers. And I essentially, asked him, if Wilkins has to get another surgery, what exactly does that mean? And this is what he said. Return to play after repeat operation. It's going to take 4 to 6 months, and the likelihood of returning to previous performance levels drops by roughly 30%. So that's not saying that he's going to be, if Wilkins is coming into the season and where he's 100% healthy, think of him as a Madden 100 overall. It's not that he's going to be a 70 overall. It's just that there is a 30% chance that he just never returns to what he was, which means there's a 70% chance that he just goes back to being the Christian Wilkins that we know and love. So just something to keep in mind and put out there. So in conclusion, yes, this Raiders breaking news is not how I wanted to start my Friday, but it's always information that I got to be willing to share. So here's what I know. Wilkins needs another surgery. It's either going to happen now, it's going to happen during the season, or it's going to happen after the season. Bottom line, a second surgery needs to happen for Christian Wilkins, which is going to put him out at least 4 to 6 months. If Wilkins gets the surgery, he will be done for the 2025 season. Maybe he tries to play through it. Maybe he listens to the Raiders medical staff. The last thing, and I got to say this, I do owe Tony Pauline an apology. Pauline reported that Wilkins was going to need another surgery, and I said I don't know how Pauline's the only guy that has this information or that he's putting out this information. What I will say is this, Pauline might have been the guy that said, you know what, even though if it's not 100% confirmed, I'll run with the story. From what I understand, it is 100% confirmed that Christian Wilkins will in fact need a second surgery, and if he gets that surgery, he's going to be out the entire season.